this meeting to order. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting. Mrs. Petter, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Whiter?
Here.
Mr. Simons?
Present.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Here.
Mrs. Moore?
Here.
Mrs. Kessler?
Here. Thank you. We're all here. If we now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next is the approval or revision of the agenda.
I would like to make a motion to revise the agenda to go into executive session after the presentations and recognitions to discuss public employment.
Is there a second? I'm sorry. Is there a second? I couldn't hear what you guys were saying.
I didn't hear the motion.
Oh, let me restate it. I'm making a motion that we go into executive session after the recognitions and awards presentations to discuss public employment. Specifically, an item in the consent decree, item number I just need to know more information on that. I can't vote for the consent decree because I don't know what that is. So I'm just making a motion that we go into executive session before we get to number 3 to discuss public employment.
Is there a problem with that? I'm asking Chris.
Is there a second?
Any problem with that?
Was adding an exec?
Okay. I'll second it.
Okay. Mrs. Cleveland has seconded. Mrs. Petter, would you call the roll?
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Whiter?
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. Next is the inspirational message from Springdale Elementary School student leadership.
Well, I'm a broken record when I talk about student performances here because it is the very best part of any board meeting that we have. I'm going to call Lisa Tenbarge, our amazing Hall of Fame school elementary principal. Thank you so much, Ms. Tenbarge, and the wonderful students.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here tonight with our Student Council leadership and our Chorale program. I'm also here with our Students Council sponsors, Mrs. Kelly McDonald and Mrs. Kelly Kroger, as well as Mrs. McGee is here with our Chorale program. I'd like to welcome our Springdale parents who are in attendance, as well as some of our staff members. We are celebrating being named the most diverse school by Niche Ratings again this school year, and our art teacher put together the design on the mugs that you have in front of you, and that is just something we wanted to share in recognition of your leadership and service to the community. The theme of our inspirational message is leadership. All of our students have leadership opportunities through the Leader in Me program. They are taking increased responsibility for the classroom and school operations through classroom jobs and building leadership programs like the Bus Helpers and Recycling program. Those interested in going above and beyond in leadership and service to our community are invited to participate in Student Council. Tonight, our Student Council elective representatives will share their leadership and service activities with you, beginning with Max Lockhart, our Student Council president.
Hi, my name is Max Lockhart. I am the president. We are here to speak about the Student Council's commitment to leadership. We are excited to share the leadership and service activities we are doing this year to help out our school and community. We began this year with our annual walkathon to raise the funds needed to complete our leadership projects. New this year, we were able to walk in the neighborhood that adjoins our school with the escort of the Springdale Police Department. The walkathon was a fun activity and it promoted school spirit, encouraged healthy exercise, and inspired student service. Thanks to the kindness of students and families, we raised over $7,700 for service projects, which is a school record.
Hello, my name is Elijah Frazier. I'm Vice President. In October, the Student Council marched in the Princeton Homecoming Parade. We really enjoyed representing our school and passing out candy to the kids on the route. Our first big project has been to focus on playground improvements. So far, we completed the Buddy Bench project, which started last school year. The student body donated and the Student Council counted nearly 400 pounds of donated bottle caps. With the help of our PTA, we were able to take the bottle caps to Evansville, Indiana, and come back with 2 large buddy benches for our playground.
All right.
Hi, my name is Jaden Logan. I am the student body reporter. In November, the Student Council took charge of Springdale's holiday food drive, as well as Fame USA's Fill the Truck project. Our students and families really showed up and paid it forward with their donations to help other families in need. In December, we were able to adopt 4 families through the City of Springdale's Springdale Offers and Support Program. Our teachers shopped for presents for all family members, and the Student Council members wrapped all the presents for each family. Then Springdale teachers delivered the presents to the families before winter break.
Greetings, my name is Kennedy Fox. I am the treasurer throughout the school year. The Student Council likes to honor our teachers and staff monthly to show how much we appreciate them. We started the year with a coffee truck for all staff. We also surprised the teachers with flavored waters, fruit, and thank you notes on the day of the walkathon. We brought in bagels and donuts to wish teachers a wonderful winter break. We borrowed Sharpies for teachers because they leave a permanent mark on us. One of our favorite things is the birthday bunch. That's where we deliver a staff signed card with a $5 Target gift card and sing a special song to our teachers on their birthday. We sure do love our teachers. We still have many things left to do this school year. For the third quarter, we voted to adopt the Bengal tiger at the Cincinnati Zoo. We will be donating $1,000 to the zoo from the funds raised by the walkathon. By the way, we chose the tiger because we love our Bengals. Hooday!
All right.
Hello, my name is Karen Benjamin. I'm the secretary. In quarter 4, we are excited to announce that we will be bringing back the community lunch, honoring the City of Springdale's police, fire, and city workers, as well as the Princeton administration. Be on the lookout for your email invitation, as we would like the board members and administration to be our special guests. We can't wait for you to come to our school so we can show you our appreciation for all you do in helping us receive the best education possible and for empowering us for college, career, and life success. As you can see, Springdale Student Council is very busy, providing leadership and service to our school and community. Thank you for your time and for allowing us to showcase some of the awesome leadership activities we are doing at Springdale. Have a great night.
We would like to close our inspirational message tonight with our chorale students singing Yes, I'm a Leader, written by Ceylon Wise of Columbus, Ohio. Our Black History Month theme is celebrating the accomplishments of African Americans from Ohio. Ceylon Wise's children's album, All One Tribe, was nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Children's Album. Our chorale will now perform under the direction of Mrs. Ligaya McGee.
but still I am chasing all my dreams. I know the 7 habits, and with these tools I will succeed. You gotta be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first, and think win-win, then you'll be fine. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Synergize with a friend, sharpen the saw, sing along. Oh, oh, yes, I'm a leader. Oh, oh, there is a leader in me. Oh, yes, I'm a leader. Oh, oh, there is a leader in me. I know you must be thinking you're far too young to take the lead. But I know just where I'm going, so get in line, come follow me. You gotta be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first, and think win-win, then you'll be fine. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Synergize with a friend, sharpen the saw, sing along. Oh, oh, yes, I'm a leader. Oh, oh, there is a leader in me. Oh, yes, I'm a leader. Oh, oh, there is a leader in me. I am a strong young leader. Just watch me as I prove it. And with the 7 habits, I can do it. Oh, oh, yes, I'm a leader. Oh, oh, there is a leader in me. Oh, yes, I'm a leader. Oh, oh, there is a leader in me. Oh, yes, I'm a leader. Oh, oh, there is a leader in me. Oh, yes, I'm a leader. Oh, oh, there is a leader in me.
That was incredible. Thank you so very much. Let's give Springdale Elementary School more round of applause. Of course.
Thank you. That was splendiferous. Next is recognition of visitors. Do we have any?
Oh, we have, I'm sorry, Mrs. Wider, I apologize.
I'm sorry.
I should have continued. We have one recognition tonight, and I'm really excited. The young man's probably a little bit nervous. Clyde, when you come up here, I'm just going to ask you a series of questions. I'm kidding, but I know you're ready. So Clyde Ward was recognized as one of the 30 teens in Cincinnati. Recognition of Black History Month. Certainly does a great job. Really taking the whole Ward family is really taken to Princeton, and Princeton is certainly taken to the Ward family, and none better than Clyde. Clyde, you're going to be recognized tonight, and this is what it reads. This certification is presented to Clyde Ward, Princeton High School, grade 10, for his attendance at the Black History Honors Television premiere screening and reception at the National Underground Railroad and Freedom Center on Monday, January 30th, 2023. This is presented, Clyde, by the entire Board of Education. The 5 board members here, and we're going to take a picture with you. You're going to try to make us look good, Clyde. So coming up here, put your hands together, Clyde Ward. And as Clyde and his family are leaving, you're actually doing the right thing. You can leave, or you could stay for 2 hours. You're gone. Okay. Hey, Clyde, one more thing. Natasha and everybody, one more thing. This is not the last time Clyde's going to be up here. I guarantee that. I'm putting it out there, Clyde, because behind your back, I did a lot of research, and you were doing unbelievable things. We're going to see him back up here again. One more round of applause, Clyde Ward.
And we didn't have any visitors who signed in to speak.
Nope.
So, and is this where we're going into executive session? So,
You need I need to make that motion.
I don't
made
know.
a motion.
You already made it.
Oh, I
so-
thought I just made a motion to
She made a
amend the
motion.
agenda.
To amend the agenda.
Agenda.
Now we need a motion to go.
Now I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss public employment of a public employee.
All right, second?
Mrs. Whiter?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes. Okay.
7:07, I'd like to make a motion to come out of executive session.
Second. Mrs. Petter?
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Weider?
Yes. Motion passes. Okay. Next is the consent agenda.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Weider?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is district business. First is approval of the December 2022 and January 2023 financial records.
I move to approve the December 2022 and January 2023 financial reports as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Petter?
First of all, just a hearty thank you and congratulations to our new Assistant Treasurer, Vanessa Brown. Had a very successful closing of January in 3 days, and that's why we have all of our reports now caught up to date and current. She's doing a fine job and adjusting to her new position. The monthly reports both the December and January financial reports both show revenue and expenditure as very close to forecast, so nothing shocking there. Probably the only thing on the revenue side for January is we did ask for 2 advances. Again, we're watching cash flow right now, and the second advance was needed to fulfill some of our obligations. We'll continue to watch that and hope to keep our money in investments as long as possible without having to draw down from our investments. So we'll stay on top of that. ESSER reports are included for December and January. Everything's humming right along on those fronts. ESSER 2, 97.5% spent and or encumbered. That is the money, again, that we have to have encumbered by June 30 and reported spent out by September 30. ESSER 3, 60.2% spent or encumbered. Again, then we have another year and a half to spend those funds. You also have your 018, the district donation fund report attached, still only at this point taking in money. We do have some purchase orders in place, so you may see some expenses coming out, and we have the Beable program coming out of this, part of it coming out of this fund, and some conference travel. Credit card report is also included for both December and January. Both months show about $1,000 in rewards program funds for that. Also, that money is going into that same district donation fund for spend. But those are the 2 reports.
Okay, any questions? If not, we will move to the approval or an update to the 5-year forecast.
I'll call the roll first on those.
I'm sorry.
I'll call the roll for the financials. Mrs.
Okay,
Moore?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Weider?
Yes,
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
thank you. And now to the 5-year forecast.
I move to approve the update to the 5-year forecast as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mrs. Petter?
As we discussed in our work session in January, we have an update to the 5-year forecast. Some of our planning for ESSER funding items is ready to be moved into general fund. So I think that's a significant enough reason that we need to adjust the forecast. So this update includes increases in capital outlay, a middle school math teacher added in January, and then ESSER positions that are moving from the ESSER grant into the general fund beginning next school year. So those are what we're showing right now. And so you can see our chart that you should be familiar with, the bars and the gold line. So you can see how our expenditures are exceeding our revenues starting next year, and that is what eats away at the cash balance for the district. So right now, we're sitting with a fairly good cash balance, but as you start spending more than you bring in, you see that quickly cash balance decreases. Then the numbers are shown. That's just the numbers that are represented in the graph. I only included just the charts that were appropriate. Since we're talking about increasing expenditures, I didn't include the full complement of all the charts we've run through in November. We'll see all those again in May when we do that final update for the year. But you can see here on the expenditure chart, again, we are a people business. Most of our expense, salary, benefit, and purchase service, since we do purchase quite a few people services too. But you can see this trend upward in expense through the next, 5 fiscal years of the forecast. The slide with the bullets on it just explains all those details that we went over at the last meeting and the specific amounts by item. I think that's important for you to keep in your back pocket, and so people can understand the change, mid-year change in the forecast. Then the important chart for us also right now is true days cash. And we have to continue to keep our thumb on this because the 5th year, fiscal year 27, school year 26-27, we're out of compliance with our board policy. In fiscal year 26, school year 25-26, we are holding on at 91 days true cash. So we're just hanging on to being in compliance that year. So anything expense-wise is immediately going to throw us into being out of compliance for 2 years. So we have to start serious planning now about what we're going to do moving forward. I think the other thing I really need you to notice is in fiscal year 24, that's school year 23-24, next year, you can see how that bar looks very similar to fiscal year 19 and 20. So, and that was November of 19 when we were on the ballot. So that, of course, is an option, and cutting expenses is an option. And we do have a shot at a revenue increase if we can get our school funding across the finish line. So those are just things we're going to have to watch. Then just followed it up again, as I always do, with this final chart, which is our story in a nutshell. And we can see how well we're doing financially and our bottom line throughout those years. And I just think this is a great picture of where we stand. We always want to see the dark black line, the revenue line, higher than the light gray line. But, we're a school district, and we're in really good company out there with school districts that are levy cycle districts, and it's not abnormal, but it's just part of being a school in the state of Ohio where property taxes drive our revenue. So the final document is what I gave you at the end of the meeting. We have to keep our eye on the remaining expenses from ESSER funds and what is our plan for that moving forward. So I know Tom and his team have been working on that, and I'm sure they'll have a great plan ahead for us, and we will incorporate that in May or in November when we have that information in the forecast. Okay?
So, quick question.
Uh-huh.
On the true days cash chart that you showed, am I hearing you correct to say that the expense update, those positions that are added are in there? I mean, is
Yes.
that? Okay.
This is a new chart. If you compared it to the one we had in November, you would see just a shift.
I'm not looking at the November. Okay, I just want to make sure. And so even with that, we're aligned similar to 2019-20.
So I do we do have to keep remembering this. We don't forecast base increases,
Right.
We have not done that, I think, well before I've been here. So as we move into our negotiations, that will change our
Okay.
expense structure, and there are no other ESSER expenses in there at this time. As soon as we have that plan, we'll push those into this document. Then the process is, I will file this with the state. They'll update it on their website so public can have viewing of our updated forecast.
That's fair.
And I just wanted to add something very quickly. Chris, thanks so much for recognizing the team because we have worked really, really hard on this. We saw this coming a while ago and in fact reduced by, already we've reduced positions. The very first two that were reduced were administration and really praise the building level principals for really rallying around that and working very hard. Every single ESSER position that we have, we've looked at. Some were long overdue that were hires. Some were positions that just had title changes. And because of ESSER, we were able to legally supplant those positions. So it saved us general fund money, which is great. So we're looking at all the positions, and we feel very confident. There's a couple ones that we know that if people leave, we have plans for those. I think we've done a great job of hiring amazing, amazing people. And we're looking at positions, not people. And the goal would be to keep those that we have and into positions that have natural attrition and not ones that have to go through a reduction or whatever. But I just also wanted to publicly praise the team for working very hard. Now, there's a smaller team, and there's a larger team, and there's a larger team. So the smaller team really looked at all of those positions. Cabinet's going to look at that, and then Leadership Academy will ultimately look at that. And people are going to know there's going to be some tough decisions, but the reality is we have to do what's best for the district. But for all taxpayers that are listening, you should be very, very proud of the work of Christine Petter as a treasurer and the administrative team at Princeton for putting kids first, but doing so in a very fiscally responsible way. Thank you.
Anything else?
Well, thank you, Ms. Petter, for your hard work on this. And I do remember we had talked a lot about those positions that were funded through ESSER funds, and you have consistently kept us up to date and kept a close eye on that. So I appreciate that. And Mr. Burton and your team, thank you.
Okay.
You
Do
ready?
we need to vote to accept it?
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Weider?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is the approval of the quote from Satterfeld and Associates.
I move to approve the quote with Satterfield and Associates as presented.
I just see this. That's it.
Do you have a question, Mrs. Kessler?
Oh,
I think she has a question.
Did we second?
I made a motion. You guys probably didn't hear me, then we do it again.
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve the quote with Satterfield and Associates as presented, unless we don't need the motion. Do we?
Second.
Oh, thank you.
Does anybody have any comments?
Can we
Does
get a
everybody have it in their board packet? Do we need to have some comments?
Well, go ahead.
Well, if you're going to vote blindly.
Somebody gonna
I'm
talk
certainly-
about it?
Yeah, we need somebody to have a brief discussion.
What is it?
Excuse me. Mary or Tanya, somebody have a comment on that? Kevin, thank you.
So Satterfield and Associates is the vendor out of Louisiana, and they offer what's called the Achiever Assessment, which tests personality dimensions as well as mental aptitudes. It's oftentimes used for leadership and succession planning, as well as really getting an inventory of leadership within the system and how to best utilize those skill sets.
Thank you, Dr. James.
So we're approving to do 25 of them?
That was the conversation that we had
So
had.
how do we pick the 25? I'm confused.
They come in sets of 25.
Their side being the school side.
Okay. So we're picking 25 individuals to do this assessment to do what? I mean, I
So-
heard to do professional development,
Sure.
succession planning, but what are we using them for?
Through the transition, this will really give everybody a really deep understanding of the strengths of the team. We have an amazing team. We do that, so it will not be obviously 25. Does not take the whole leadership team, but it would be cabinet extended, a little bit extended, to really understand the unique skills that people have, especially as we transition to a new superintendent.
So it's leadership then. I got confused because I'm looking at it says as a staff workforce development tool, so I didn't know what are we using them for. So we're going to be using it to assess our leadership.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get
And I
at.
think the 25 was, they sell them in blocks of 25.
Okay,
So if we
okay.
bought
So
20, it
we,
would've been a higher
each
number.
block, each 25, okay, I got that part. Okay, I was just getting confused as to who are we doing this with?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mrs. Wyder?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes?
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is approval of agreement with Refugee Connect. Is someone speaking to that?
We have to. I
Need a
move that
motion.
we approve the agreement with Refugee Connect.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve that agreement.
Yes, so just a very quick comment. This is to provide some services for people that are displaced because of war, natural disasters, and so forth, that may relocate. And actually, this was put, there was a discussion about this prior to even what happened over in Turkey and Syria, the horrific natural disaster that occurred there, over 25,000 valuable lives lost. And, you know, we just don't know. But this was put in place before that, just in case, but provide some unbelievable services.
Who provides those services? Refugee Connect does?
Yes.
And the children that might be relocated, are they going to attend Princeton schools?
Yes, they would be in Princeton. Is that?
Yeah, that's, so
Yeah,
is there?
so if they're displaced and then they move in the area, remember, there's a whole litany of things. We could go through a whole education course right now with the different aspects of it, but one could be through the McKinney-Vento Homelessness Act. When they would come in here, if any student is there, then they would enroll in school, and then we'd be able to provide some support services around that.
I'm just curious, as we look at this, are there other districts in our area doing something similar?
Yes.
Okay, I
Yeah,
just
in
want to
fact,
make
there,
sure we're not the only one.
Yeah, just Sunday, I was having a conversation with the superintendent they have a large Turkish population there,
Okay.
and they're looking to do something because they're very concerned about what may very well happen. A huge influx, yep. Not that they would be concerned that there'd be an influx per se, as it was just to be able to provide services.
Got it.
Anything else? Mrs. Petter?
Mr. Simons?
Yes?
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder?
Yes. Motion passes. Next is the approval of financial agreement with Best Point Education. Who's speaking to that?
I move to approve.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the financial agreement with West Point Education as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Otherwise, Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Weider?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
I'm going to abstain because of the business that Best Point is in and family members that are possibly involved with West Point.
Possibly what?
Possibly involved
Oh,
from a business standpoint.
okay.
Okay, are we ready, Ms. Petter, to move on?
Yes.
Okay.
You're at the Lincoln Heights overnight.
Okay, the overnight field trip for Lincoln Heights fifth grade students.
I move to approve the overnight field trip request for Lincoln Heights fifth grade students as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Just very briefly, this is yet another overnight experience that being able to offer our students just amazing. And when we look at equitable opportunities, this is one to be able to provide a wonderful opportunity for students to go to Camp Campbell Guard and really learn a lot. So we're really excited to be able to bring this forward to the board.
I can tell you from my own personal experience, going to Camp Campbell Guard was one of my favorite trips back in my past life. It was a good one. So, Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Weider?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is approval of overnight out-of-state field trip for DECA students.
I move to approve the overnight out-of-state field trip for DECA students as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Absolutely. I have to tell you, this is, there's a lot of work that's done in the district that probably nobody really knows how hard some of the teachers, staff, administrators work, but Rebecca McGowan is absolutely a superstar. Through a great partnership with Great Oaks, we're able to work with Rebecca every day, and what she has done for the marketing program, the business program, and for the DECA students is it's not a miracle in a negative sense. It's just what she's had to do to get to this point is just amazing. 2 years ago, we had one student that shadowed the state competition, one student that was just allowed to go just to see what the experience would be like had they qualify. And now we have 12 students that are participating at the state competition, and we are looking forward to coming to the Board of Education for a little financial support to surprise the kids with some things when they go down to Orlando and participate in the national tournament. And it's important to note, too, that Great Oaks, again, with their partnership, they fund the vast majority of everything. I'm saying the vast majority because there are 12 of our students going down there with a great partnership at Great Oaks. We should have some type of stake in that as well. And the stake I'm talking about may very well be S-T-E-A-K. You know what I mean, Gina Ruffin-Moore? Let's go.
Yeah, you need chaperones? That is Orlando,
Yeah.
Orlando, Florida.
Yes, we would,
yeah.
well, not you chaperoning, but we will send an administrator
I'm just saying, if no
down
one's
there.
available, I can help.
We could go and have a real good time.
Yeah, Disney World, Universal.
Any other discussion? Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Weider?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is the approval of Athletic Tri-County Golf Ranch 3-year agreement of services.
Okay, I move to approve the Athletic Tri-County Golf Ranch 3-year agreement of services as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Just very briefly, the best that we possibly can, we like to almost, well, exclusively partner with organizations within our district. And again, we have 2 amazing cities, 4 incredible villages. We represent parts of 3 counties and 3 townships, and there's more going on with that. But Tri-County is right down the street. It's a great venue for our students to practice at and get ready for golf. The golf program continues to grow, and being so close, the worst case scenario, but the kids could walk there if they would need to. But you know, there's transportation, obviously, that's provided, but it's wonderful, and we really appreciate the fact that Tri-County, after some new ownership and some things, have really stepped up and providing great services for us.
My comment on this is part of the equity piece that is often discussed but looked at in a narrow lens. Those of you that are golfers understand that there's a lot of business conducted on the golf course. And a large segment of our students have not been exposed to the sport. Therefore, as young adults and adults, they are not given the opportunity to participate. When business is being discussed, deals are made, handshakes, that sort of thing. So I think this is great for our district in particular and for our students long term.
Anything else? Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Wyder?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is academic update.
Thank you, Mrs. Wyder. I'm going to call Dr. Mary Phillips up to the podium to share some results about the Youth Truth Survey. And before she comes up, or before she gets to the podium, let me just share with you that, you know, it's easy to say things. It's easy to talk about what you believe in. That's one thing. But it's not what you say, it's what you do. So we talk about student voice. We talk about community voice. And while certainly not perfect, we're not perfect, but I will say this, that today we had student voice sessions that were well attended. And this Youth Truth Survey is really important to us. And we moved away from another survey that we feel didn't really provide the information that we needed to make some change to really provide authentic voice. Dr. Phillips?
Thank you, Mr. Burton. This is actually our second year doing the Youth Truth Survey. We will be doing it again this year. So the data that you have is from last year. It's April school year, and April 2022. But it's based upon last year's last school year. So at any rate, we're excited about doing it again. We got the survey from a grant that we had been given. We applied for, we got the grant, and one of the mandates was to do the Youth Truth Survey. And based upon the data that we got, we were like, wow, this is really great. Because we had been doing the Effective School Survey for quite a long time. And so basically what you have here is you have, I had actually shared some information with Mr. Simons so that you would be able to have additional data if you needed it. But the survey actually, how should I say this? Last year we had, the year before last we had 3,000 students, and 3,000 respondents. This past year we had 4,900 respondents, and this year coming up we're expecting to have more. The one thing that I thought was really good was that when you look at the percentages, one of the things that the Youth Truth Survey consultant said is that we really need to try to shoot for 80% of our respondents from the students, as well as the staff, as well as families. And so Mr. Burton and I got together and we decided on the themes that we were going to look at and have the staff and the students and the families respond to. So if you look at the survey, will you?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Let's go to the third slide. Third slide. No. Backwards. Yeah. One more. One more up. One more up. Okay, there you go. So if you look at the themes, these are the things that the students responded to, the staff responded to, and families responded to. And Mr. Burton and I looked at those. We were able to make some selections, and so these were the themes that we decided to assess our families on, because we felt our families and our students and our staff on, because we felt like these are areas that we really needed to concentrate on. So next slide. And so, and then the next slide. So the results are district results as opposed to individual school results. We have those school results, and we can share that with you. It's part of the data that we had given based upon the link in the slide presentation that I had given. But when you look at the first slide, it talks about families experience positive relationships in their school based on respect, care, and approachability. And so when the students responded, 86% of those elementary students felt that families experienced, 86% of the families felt like they had a positive experience. With middle school, it was the same thing, 73%, and then high school, 75%. So if you look at the next slide, students, families, and staff perceive that a high-quality education is provided at their school. This question was only asked to high school students, so it was 57% of the students felt that they have a high-quality education, and that a high-quality education is provided at their school. Families, it was 75%, and then staff was 80%. If you look at the next slide, staff and students care about each other. At the elementary, 93% felt like the staff cared about them. Middle school was 73%, and high school was 87%. Respect for students. Students were asked, does your teacher treat you with respect? And adults were asked, adults in the school treat students with respect. So with students, it was 67%. They felt like my teachers treat me with respect. As it relates to staff, it was 87%. The adults in the student treat students with respect. They responded and said that 87% of the staff felt that way. The next one was expectations. Does your teacher ask you to keep trying when the work gets hard? 59% of the students said that. That yes, teachers, the teachers asked me to keep trying and working harder. 70% of the families, my school sets high expectations for students, so they felt that the expectations were set high. And then 64% of the staff felt like my school sets high expectations for students.
Dr. Phillips, can we go to the COVID effect slide? Can we move forward to the COVID effect slide? I think it's 3. One more. Thank you. This, I think, is very, very relevant, and I'd like you to spend a little bit of time talking about these numbers, if you would.
Okay, which one is that one? I'm sorry. I can't really.
So the COVID effect, it's a couple slides up.
COVID.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Phillips.
Well, you know, one of the things that occurred with this particular survey, when we first gave it, we were dealing with COVID. And so Mr. Burton and I felt like this was a good question to ask again last year, because we were just coming off of COVID. And so, so the question was, how much has the COVID-19 pandemic affected me? 36% of the students said it affected me pretty much. 52% of the families felt that way, and 54% of the staff. So when you really think about all of the work that we've been doing with our students to really try to catch them up as far as the academic loss is concerned, and then working with our staff around providing mental health supports for students. I think we've done a great job with our wellness program, making sure that our staff is engaged in some of those wellness activities. It really does point that definitely we need to really support our students and our staff, and even with our families as well. And so I thought that was a great slide to share. Do you want me to go back?
No, go to the takeaways for school improvement. And I tell you why, it's fascinating. I'm going to get to the other two slides later. Mm-hmm. But it's fascinating because only 36% of the students said that it had a mild or an effect, which is pretty amazing when you think about the can-do attitude and all that and where they were. So I think as we kind of unpack, and Dr. Phillips talks about the improvement areas, I think that aspect is going to come up again.
Yeah,
some of the comments.
I also think that what's important is that the survey is for students in grades 3 through 12. So not the kindergarten, first and second grade. But the takeaways from that was, can you go to the next one? Yeah, the takeaways from all of the data that was shared is that there are some areas that we definitely need to improve in. And so those areas were the engagement piece with families and students. Belonging piece was low across the board at elementary, middle school, and high school. Relationships was low. Well, not as low, but definitely we needed to improve in that. Family communication and feedback, that's something that we've been working on, and we've done a lot of work around, the buildings have done a lot of work around engaging families and engaging, having parent forums and second cup of coffees and things like that to really get parents to get into the school, and also to share information about some of the concerns that they have or what it is they want to see in their schools. And then with regards to safety, well, we know that is a concern for our students and our staff. So that's definitely a school improvement area that we need to concentrate on. And then culture, that was dealing with just respect and fairness. And so that was another area that we definitely needed to work on as well. When we talk with building principals about how are you using the data, one of the things that they shared was they presented in their academic achievement plan ways that they are taking the data and making improvements. First of all, they took the survey and shared it with their staff at the beginning of the school year. So staff understood exactly from where students were coming and where families were coming from, and also what they were feeling. And so the principals actually developed action steps to really work on the areas of improvement. We were very, when we talked with the building principals, when they did their academic achievement plans, we definitely focused on Youth Truth Survey. How did you use the data? And so all of them talked about the instructional rounds, going in, making sure the students were engaged in their classrooms. Talked about relationships. How are you developing relationships? So they talked about ways that they're doing that, in addition to ensuring that students have the right supports in place. The one-to-one supports, the intervention groups, etc. And obviously with the family engagement, all of them have a family engagement team in their buildings now. In addition to that, the second cup of coffee, many of the schools call it the second cup of coffee. Some of the schools call it something a little different, but it's the same thing. But the idea is to really bring our families in and really engage them and make sure that they're listening to them. Mr. Burton talked about student voice and parent voice. And so this is allowing us to be able to take that data and make changes in our school. Yes.
Jason, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. That was all, Dr. Phillips. I just wanted to make sure. You were talking about it. I just wanted the public to know what you're talking about. Thank you.
Do you want me to go back?
No. Just talk about the Youth Through Survey, when it's going to be administered, because you covered the first 2 points.
Okay. The survey is going to be administered again in actually February 24th through March the 27th. We have an open, the survey is going to open at that particular time. And all of our principals have actually moved forward with making sure that their teachers know, et cetera. And so we're looking forward to making that happen. Once we get that data back, the data will be returning in April. And once we get that data back, then we'll be able to have some trend data based upon the results from this past year, and then looking at the results from this year based upon some of the things that have occurred in their schools. So we're really looking forward to that. Principals are ready to go. They really feel like that this is a much better tool to use because it really talks about perception, and this is the best way to get it. It's a virtual, forgot to share with you, it is a virtual survey. So students will be taking it in their classrooms, and we'll send it out to staff, to families so that they can take it, and then staff will take it all on one day as well. It's about 15 minutes. It's about a 15-minute survey. So we're excited to get the information, to be able to use it in our strategic plan that's coming up and those kinds of things.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. And I just wanted to remind the board that we actually were going to talk about this a long time ago, but it kept getting bumped because there were more timely curriculum updates and academic updates to go. And I praise Dr. Phillips for her great work to make sure that we continue to chart the course and all that. There's some wonderful questions in there that I think kind of defines who we are. We talked earlier, actually we heard this great presentation by our beautiful Springdale Elementary School, and they talked about being the most diverse school district by niche.com, most diverse, elementary school in the state of Ohio. And we love that, and we welcome that. We love the diversity, we love the equity, and we ultimately will include the students. So there's questions in there as well. We'll send all the information to all the board members. I just want to caution everybody that when we look at this, we don't use this as an evaluative tool. We use it as a tool to grow.
Right.
And it's very, very different. So when you look at some of the areas, you'll see we have to address them, and we have addressed them. But just because we address them doesn't mean that we're satisfied. We'll continue to do that and grow. But this is one of the things, this is why a lot of people are scared about authentic student and family voice. Because, the results sometimes come back and they're shocking. Just like that COVID slide, it was amazing. I think just about everybody here would have thought that the students would have felt that COVID had a much larger effect on them than what it did. At least those surveyed, those that completed the survey. But Dr. Phillips, you did an excellent job. Certainly appreciate you being so dogged to make sure that we follow through with student voice. Do you want to talk a little bit today about what happened today, just as an example of student voice at Sharonville Elementary School?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that we do is, and I think this is great, that we have a Let's Talk session, and we're doing this in every school based upon some of the information that we've gathered from our Youth Through survey. And so Dr. Fosnaugh and I went to Sharonville today. I've kind of assigned administrators to go to the schools during their lunchtime. And so we just pull kids, talk to them, and, you know, it could be an honor student, it could be a student in special ed, it could be, you know, just students in general. And it's amazing the information that we gather from them. First of all, from all of the schools that I've talked to, students that I've talked to, they love Princeton. Now, are they just saying that? No, because I say, tell me more about that. And so they're really appreciative of the work that the principals do, the programs that you guys have approved to have in our district. And one of the things that we get from that is we take all that information and we give it back to the principals. And we say, principal, now this is what your students are saying about your school. Sometimes we get, I want this, I want that, can I have this? You know, they want other things. Or they see some things that may be amiss and they tell us. And some of those things we can actually make it happen ASAP, which we've done that in a number of schools where students have shared. You know, why can't we do this, or why can't we do that? I'd like to have this. Mrs. Stiles and I went to a school and we listened and we immediately got the principal involved and we made it happen, right? So that's the whole purpose of the Let's Talk sessions. We want to make sure that they're responding to the survey, we're hearing what they're saying, we're going out and talking to them, we're listening to them, and then we're acting upon some of the things that they're. And we say, we can't do it all at one time. It's going to take years. It's going to take a couple of years for some of those things that they're asking for. But the point of the matter is they really appreciate us coming and seeing some of the things that, you know, that they want happen. So.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Thank you.
May I just say something?
Sure.
I just wanted to say the slide that surprised me on the COVID effect, how much has COVID-19 pandemic affected me? More than students, more than families, the largest group affected was our staff. And when you think about our district, you know, you hear that expression, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. If our staff is not happy, I think that's a problem. I'm not saying they're not happy in this situation, but I just never really thought about how much of an effect COVID had on the staff.
Well, it had a major impact.
In addition to the students and the families, you know what I mean? Yeah. But thank you for this.
I actually would have expected that number to be higher than 54%, because we knew, we lived it, and it affected everybody here, and then the people on the front line, it affected the most. The great staff and teachers we have.
Thank you.
So, speaking of voices, do we have a module for taxpayers and a module for business leaders? And I say that in light of the fact that you're retiring after 37 years of service to the public as an educator. We as a district are going to need to have a database on these key supporters. So is there anything in this survey, a module that we could use or utilize or leverage to reach out to our tax base that does not have students in the district and the businesses that's, as you saw last week, really do support us?
Yeah, I would say that's one of the tools to use, is the business community, because it's not just business, it's also community leaders that are there. In fact, when we were walking from executive session, I was trying to sell some extra gala tickets. So when we were walking, and I looked in the concession stand and I asked them, did you buy the gala tickets? And there were people there, unfortunately, they didn't all say yes, but there's still time. But the biggest thing is that there were people there that thanked, community members, that thanked us for having a business community leadership program. So I think that is one way. We have database galore of that. Tanya Key has done such a marvelous job taking over and running with that program after Tricia Roddy did a marvelous job. And Anna Martinez is doing a great job with connections. So we have all kinds of database to be able to throw out information to get to get that. Typically at the business community partnership breakfast, we have a QR code that we ask for a thought exchange to be able to glean information from that, but absolutely, you will be left in very great hands. And I just wanted a 36 years. I don't want anybody reading into the 37, because you just talked about 36 earlier. Thank you, Mr. Simons, for trying to have me stay one more year, though. That was nice.
But to Mr. Simon's point, about a month ago, I made a visit to the emergency room at Mercy, and they asked, well, maybe you have COVID. Do you think you could? I said, no, I've had the shots and the boosters and everything. And they said, where did you get them? And I said, well, Princeton has a school-based health center. And they said, we didn't know that. If we had known that, we could have volunteered and helped them. And we could have been doing extra things for them. So they were glad to find that out. And by the way, I just had some nasty bug. I didn't have COVID, so.
Well, that's a good thing, Susan.
It's a very good thing.
But I just want to make sure taxpayers, the ones that aren't business, maybe they're retirees, maybe they're just new to the area, they don't have children, that they're also included because they are supporters of the district.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, we send out that beautiful biking report too at the end of the year, and within that, we always talk about if there's any questions or concerns to reach out, but we could be a little bit more deliberate this year with the announcement of the new superintendent, my farewell message, but we'll have wherever Tricia is, she's probably taking notes right now for it. Thank you, Tricia. To be able to put in a QR code that will lead to a survey so that they can, what do you want the new superintendent to know, or what kind of questions do you have, and we'll make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Anything else? Treasurer's report.
Few items tonight. First of all, a little light reading for everyone tonight. Your comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 22. We are still waiting to hear back from state auditors on our audit. It takes a while. They're a little behind, short-staffed at the auditor's office, so we should hear about that hopefully very soon. You have another Southwest OSBA Spring Conference meeting coming up March 9th, Warren County Career Center, 5 to 8:30. I'll need to know who wants to go. I'll keep bothering you about that. Okay, but you can check that out on your calendars. I included a 4-slide presentation from STRS on pickup. John had asked a little bit about pickup. I thought these 4 slides explain pickup really nicely, and I think you guys can all learn from that. If you have any questions, Sandy Bertram and I are happy to talk about that too. The biennial budget, here we go. Remember, it doesn't go into law until the end of June, but we certainly will spend a lot of time talking about it. And some of the talk is the governor did approve the next 2 years of phase-in for school funding, which is great. Unfortunately, most of us think it should be fully funded starting next year since the state has a lot of money right now. So the push for that is going to start very soon. I know that BASA and OASBO are both very excited about trying to get that 100% funded while the state has money to spend. So we'll let you know more about that as we move on, and if anyone feels moved to write a letter for testifying or go up and testify in person, let us know, and we can help work through that. And I think that's it for my few items.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'm going to piggyback on the last thing that Treasurer Petter said, which is about the fair funding. On Friday, tentatively scheduled Friday the 24th of this month, they'll have the traveling show coming back, talking a little bit about fair funding. It's not official yet, but you'll get more information about that when that happens. So again, Friday the 24th. And again, this is in partnership with all these state organizations, and it's wonderful. OASBO does a great job, and then BASA, the Alliance, and the list goes on and on. John had made mention about the Business Community Partnership Breakfast. Just special thanks again to all those people for making it happen. You know, a group that doesn't get recognized enough would be the high school administration, because Rebecca McGowan does a wonderful job and she gets students there, but we ask them to do a lot with school counselors as well. And last week was a great opportunity for us to recognize school counselors. It's National School Counselors Week. I actually had an opportunity to talk to a couple on my way home on Friday night, and the one that happened to be a middle school counselor who said, "I've never felt more appreciated." Direct quote was, "Mr. Burton, they spoiled me." She goes, "What are you going to do for us next week?" So I thought that was great. Nothing, Denise Hughes, nothing. Just kidding. We also obviously, this month is such a beautiful month, and I always talk about this the same way, but Black History Month is a month of 28 days this year. But the reality is, history is not just in the month of February or the month of March when you celebrate so many different causes. It is every single day. It's not just in February. That's a hashtag. There's another hashtag, history is 365. So when we look at the recognition of the beautiful diversity that we have, we should do this each and every day. And I'm very proud of the fact that you see activities throughout the course of this month, but it's not just Black history, it's also Hispanic heritage, it's also women's history, and the list again goes on and on and on, and really looking at the beautiful cultures that we have. And I spoke on Saturday night at the great Booster Bash that was here recognizing 65 beautiful years of service to the students who choose to participate in our wonderful music program. But I talked about us coming together as a people, and that's really what it's about. And when you looked in the crowd on Saturday night and you look on the stage today, is tapestry of diversity. And that is something we should never, ever, ever run away from. The great work with our equity plan is going to persist and exist. And it's something that is amazing, and the great equity team that we have. And again, you know, when you look at those meetings through the course of the year, and everybody who's on the equity team knows out there, it is not just about one race or one gender. Equity is across the board, and that's why I'm so very proud to serve as superintendent of a district that so values that, a board that understands and appreciates that, and that is something that's amazing. So I would just say that if you're walking around the schools, you will notice that there's great recognition of wonderful contributions all the way throughout history. So that's amazing. This month, you're also going to see great recognition in March. And again, the list goes on and on and on. As a reminder to the Board of Education, and I'm going to pass this out, everybody does not need this because there are some board members that completed all 75 surveys. Now, as a reminder to all the public, tonight and tomorrow you have an opportunity to complete 25 in each day. Tonight and tomorrow. You can help. If you just do 100, you can actually get us some good money for our kids. We give a chance to raise $30,000. We're just shy of that by about $8,000-ish. So I'm going to pass this in case anybody needs to sign up. It's very quickly, and all it's going to take, if you do 50 surveys, we can make $100, and it will take you less than 50 minutes. So 25 tonight, 25 tomorrow. That is the homework for the Board of Education. On Thursday, we have an unbelievable professional development initiative that's called Viking University. It's in its 8th year of existence, and the team out there, there's also a professional development committee that's done a wonderful job. But please, if you can, 8 o'clock, be here or be square. It It is going to be amazing. So the professional development team has worked very hard. The theme this year is going to be a Disney theme about magical Princeton. It is magical, and it's magical to have over 90 learning sessions, right? Dr. Phillips? 90 learning sessions. We have, okay. Yeah, there are a lot. Right around 90. I may have inverted the 9 and the 6, so if it was over 60, I did that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, let's say this. It's more than 60 for sure. We have featured sessions. It's more than 60 for sure of our staff leading sessions, and that is the power behind it. While we have great feature speakers and our keynote speaker is second to none, Tom Murray, who's with Future Ready, and he does so many other things. He's going to bring the house down. He's amazing. And it's going to be something you will not want to miss. And the work that goes on behind it, Nancy Bortle, one of our great administrative assistants, and many others, Holly Jones, and the list goes on, the people that work so very hard to put this together. And led by Dr. Mary Phillips and Libby Stiles and Tanya Westwright and Kevin Jameson, Teresa Warren, Kelly Parent, Dr. Rana Fosnow, Ladora Hill, and even John Fricke takes part in this as Director of Operations, making sure that all the rooms are ready. Very heavy lift. Chris Lockhart, Director of Technology, Trisha Roddy, and Mr. Douche, are you presenting this year? But you know people that are, and they're going to do an amazing job. Yes, every single year. That's incredible. And if I missed anybody, it's not my fault. It actually is my fault. Tom Sendre I see out there too. So all the people certainly appreciate that. And then lastly, and this is kind of a heads up, we've had amazing conversations about why certain courses are named the way they are and the confusion that sometimes it may cause people. And so we've had discussions around our college prep courses. We've had conversations around STEM, also College Credit Plus courses. So we've really kind of looked, every year this typically happens, but this year there's been more in-depth conversations in the buildings, at central office, in the classrooms. And so we're going to probably put forth something to you to look at. We have approved the Polaris as it exists right now. But, you know, it takes 2 readings, but we may put something forward before I leave that I think is going to not cause as much confusion. It's going to read simpler, it's going to be more accurate, and it's something that is going to be, I think, very helpful as we move forward. Okay? So it's a little kind of an infomercial, if you will, of what's forthcoming. That is all for my report. Thank you.
Anything else?
I just want to thank you for mentioning Black History Month, and the historian in me cannot resist but mention that the first Black person to serve on this prestigious board, the Princeton Board of Education, was Mr. George Wren, appointed in 1969, later elected, and later became vice president and served for over 7 years. Thank you.
Anything else? I would like to move at this time that the board and Mrs. Petter go into executive session.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Petter?
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Wider?
Yes. I don't think we'll be too long.